It is one thing to hear about a place or read about it. It is quite another to see it firsthand. I studied the Drakenbriar before embarking on this venture, and I studied this hellish region with special attention. The Hell of Thorns may be a dramatic name, but it is well earned. Even so, the locals we've met have mostly referred to this place as the Briarlands. We set out early in the morning, just as dawn was breaking over this desolate landscape. We've moved with considerable speed given the terrain, using paths worn down by the many gem hunters over the years. Or perhaps the paths were worn by more bestial things. It doesn't bear thinking about too deeply. Today is not a day for lengthy entries or prolonged musings. No more fables, no more tales, no more legends. Just 5 lost fools and the quest we've set ourselves. The fog has been heavy all morning, giving way to scattered rain this afternoon. We passed by a pair of lindwyrms, or at least they seemed to be lindwyrms of some variety or another. The group appears to be far more diverse than I'd originally been led to believe. The pair we saw were likely a mated couple. I recall reading something about such pairings remaining close together for several days. It may have given rise to fantastical tales of lindwyrms with 2 heads. Easy enough to see how, given the omnipresent haze of fog and falling ash. We also encountered an altogether limbless species of lindwyrm. It looked almost like a giant serpent, apart from the distinctly draconic head. Its scales were rather colorful, which might indicate some sort of mating season, but might just as easily indicate a degree of venomous toxicity. We kept our distance as best we could. A limbless creature like this might move very swiftly and efficiently through the tangles of butcher briar that surround us now on all sides. We're all a bit on edge today, but otherwise we each appear to be differently affected by this place. Toby is scribbling notes most of the time, while Scrimshaw seems to be on a constant lookout for potential trophies. Jack is simply watching his surroundings, looking more nervous than anything else. Charlotte, meanwhile, looks almost unnervingly at ease. The daylight is beginning to fade. We're too far out to make it back to the outpost before nightfall, so we have to camp. We've tried to distract ourselves from this unpleasant truth by talking over how to find the sword thorns, as Scrimshaw calls them. The consensus is they are most likely to be found in lindwyrm lairs and potentially the nests of other resident carnivores. Thus, we may try seeking out the scent of rotting flesh, as one might expect from the larder of one of these creatures. Still, I'm not certain that would work. In all of the stories and accounts I've been able to read through, there was no mention of any sort of carrion stench. I suspect that, perhaps, the lindwyrms might have some sort of method of preserving their food. It's possible that their venom has antimicrobial effects, though this is wild speculation at best. Night has fallen, and we've settled in as best we could in a reasonably pleasant campsite. The place is mossy and almost green in places. Apparently, it is one of the islands of vegetation that has been spared from the most recent volcanism by random chance. We're keeping watch in shifts through the night. Currently, it is my turn, and I'm writing to distract myself just a little. These Briarlands are not quiet at night. It's a wonder any of us can sleep at all. I suppose that exhaustion has something to do with it. We've covered a considerable distance today. The air here is also quite foul, and there are faint tremors almost constantly underfoot. Turning my thoughts to the morrow, we have something of a plan. From this rough campsite, there are 2 viable paths we might try to take deeper into the thorns. The larger, smoother path was probably made by some sort of suitably large predator. As such, it is likely to lead towards a lair, eventually. The narrower path still has potential, though. It has been agreed that Charlotte and myself will follow the narrow path, while the others take the broad path. Today has gone better than I'd expected it to, at least thus far. We parted ways in the early morning light, and Charlotte and I began making our way down the narrow, winding path. It didn't take all that long before we happened upon a patch of strange red growths emerging from the otherwise grim vegetation, a decided contrast to the sparse rust-hued epiphytes we've seen elsewhere. A closer look revealed something akin to the brooms sometimes seen on plants in more normal reality. Most likely, these were induced by some sort of fungal infection in the plant. The vivid scarlet hue was a perfect match to what I'd read about in the old fable. I harvested several samples while Charlotte was kind enough to keep watch. Encouraged by this development, we pressed deeper into the biome, coming quite near to the edge of the habitable zone, I think. The ground here trembles quite alarmingly, and the air is all but unbreathable. We've kept clear of low places, as they're likely to hold pockets of carbon dioxide and other dangerous gases. The telltale glimmer of pale bones beneath the briars serves as a grim warning in this regard. Still, despite the hazards, our persistence has been rewarded. We found a series of strange, rounded growths on some of the briars. The plants themselves seem a bit malnourished, with thin, gangly stems. This might be due to some sort of nutrient draining to support these growths. Then again, it might just as easily be due to the sheer hostility of the environment here. Regardless, I believe the mystery of the fabled fruit might have been solved. These rounded forms are not actually fruits, of course. Instead, they are galls. Most likely they were formed by the actions of gall wasps, like the curious wasp I encountered back in the forest a few days ago. Naturally, I will collect as many samples as I can safely carry. Something is wrong. Charlotte claims she heard a scream some distance off. It came from the direction the others in our group would have traveled in. It's time to move. To say that today has been difficult would be a gross understatement. We followed the distant cries until even I could clearly make them out. We met up with the trio quite close to the campsite we'd left earlier this morning. They were in rough shape, to put it mildly. We didn't have a chance to speak before their pursuer came into view. It was a monstrous thing with a passing resemblance to an overgrown drake. This behemoth was older, though, more reptilian, more primitive. At least it felt like something older. Something that hadn't changed much in the eons since the Permian extinction. Something that should have died out, but persisted in this hellish haven, hidden away from the saner realms of reality. A reptilian horror adorned with what looked like twisted fungal growths along its back. As yet, we have no name for this monstrosity. I'm not sure anybody else who encountered it has survived yet to tell the tale. If it wasn't for Charlotte's timely intervention, we'd most likely be dead. Even her skill with the Vorpal blade was just enough to fend the creature off. She wounded it, but not deeply. Just enough to discourage it, or so it would appear. While I am relieved to still be alive after such an encounter, we are by no means out of trouble just yet. Jack has been wounded rather badly, while Scrimshaw has a few shallow scrapes. Even these could prove lethal, though, as it would appear that the monster is highly venomous. Such is the case with most creatures in this accursed place. For the moment, our priority is getting back to the outpost with all haste. It is night now. Beyond that, I'm not sure how much time has passed. We made it back to the old castle somehow. The low gravity helped a great deal. Still, by the time we arrived, Jack was looking quite ill. Scrimshaw was starting to fade as well. Taking a cue from the old fable, I set about treating their wounds with some of the scarlet foliage I'd taken from the briars. That seemed to stabilize them, apparently serving as an antitoxin to the monster's venom. Indeed, Scrimshaw's health was largely restored within an hour after treatment. In the course of my ministrations, I was able to learn more of just what had happened. To be brief, the trio had found the lair they were searching for. None of them would say just what the place looked like, and it might be for the best that I haven't seen such a place firsthand. The most any would tell was that the thorns were remarkably overgrown, and their adornments were just as one might expect. The lair appeared to be unoccupied at the time, so the group set to work. For his part, Scrimshaw was able to collect several of the largest, most impressive thorns, though it did apparently take a bit of time and effort. As for Toby, he took samples of some of the things impaled on those thorns. Apparently their mood was fairly good at the time, and they were conversing perhaps a little too loudly. The owner of the lair was not in fact absent, it was merely sleeping, and it turned out to be a light sleeper. When it attacked, only Jack's quick intervention saved Toby's life. Even then, he did little more than push the man aside, and was wounded deeply for his trouble. Scrimshaw employed one of the thorns he'd collected as a makeshift weapon against the creature. This gave them a chance to escape, though it was a near thing, and he wasn't left unscathed. As I sit here now, I'm looking over the large galls I collected only this morning. Their color seems to be fading already, turning from a reddish pink towards a dull, murky brown. It isn't much of a shift yet, but the degradation does seem to be accelerating. I'll have to work quickly and see if I might test the other part of the fable. Granted, I wouldn't have wanted anybody to be wounded simply to test the healing potential of such a sample, but I will not hesitate to try and use it under the circumstances. It is good to be home after a very long and eventful trip. Much has happened in the days since we left that outpost on the edge of the Briarlands, the Hell of Thorns so aptly named. As it turned out, the old fable of the healing fruit was largely accurate. Jack's wounds essentially closed up overnight, leaving only the faintest of scars. Scrimshaw's relatively shallow wounds practically vanished as I watched. As for the galls themselves, they rotted away to blackened husks within a day of harvesting. The red foliage has kept fairly well, though, and I've had a chance to analyze the samples properly since our return home. Regarding the return itself, we were able to gain a considerable amount of aid in traveling back across the Drakenbriar. Several of the gem hunters were quite interested in our story. They might not have believed us if it weren't for the evidence we'd provided, courtesy of my photoeidetic device. The documented discovery of a creature like that monstrosity has already created something of a sensation within the community of liminal biome explorers. Toby has capitalized on this sensation, publishing his research into what is apparently a grim symbiosis between the butcher briar and several draconid species. Scrimshaw allowed one of his thorn trophies to be dissected and analyzed, and it revealed a most interesting structure. The thorn is covered in minuscule pores leading into a center of spongy material that is quite rich in antimicrobial chemicals and digestive enzymes. Apparently, the briar secretes this mixture through some of the pores on the thorn's surface, while other pores draw in the half-digested juices of whatever creature has been impaled. In essence, the butcher briar is a carnivorous plant that relies upon lindwyrms and other draconids to procure its food supply. It takes a share of the creatures impaled on it, and in return it preserves the carcasses through the long winter. Toby has been gracious enough to name the rest of our little group as contributing authors on his upcoming publication. He has also taken Jack in as a research assistant. I hope the collaboration is profitable for both of them. As for the monster we encountered, scientists are still debating over its nature. In all honesty, they're still debating on a name for the creature. One of the more colorful ones I've heard suggested was the Tarask, but I don't think that will win out. Regardless, it is not my concern at this point, as I've been focused on my own research. The foliage samples I collected from the butcher briar do indeed appear to be a sort of altered growth induced by a fungal infection of the plant tissues. They are rich in a number of exotic compounds which might easily function as poisons themselves if they were not counteracting some form of venom. As for the reason for such a development, I can only speculate at this point. It is known that all of the known draconid species are omnivorous, and the butcher briar is likely a staple of their diet. After all, once you get through the outer layer of thorns, the stem interiors are quite spongy and soft, made for storing up moisture and nutrients to last through various disasters in the environment. So perhaps the antivenom compounds in the brooms are merely accumulations of such compounds already found at lower levels within the entire plant. After all, draconid venom appears to work against cellular structures found in both animals and plants, so maybe these compounds are a defense against the plant being poisoned whenever a part of it is eaten. The accumulation might just be a side effect of the infection. That, or perhaps the fungus produces these compounds and is tolerated as a parasite because of this biochemical benefit. In all honesty, this mystery would take several more expeditions to unravel, and I am not particularly inclined to revisit that realm anytime soon. So I will forward my research along to both Toby and Scrimshaw and let them decide what to do with it from there. As for me, I'm content to return to my usual business for the time being. At least until Charlotte grows restless and in need of another venture into the liminal biomes.